Hello and welcome to this episode of Self-Made. I'm your host, Dee Brown CEO. Joining me on this episode is Lawrence Salone. Lawrence is the founder and CEO of Post-Trauma Institute. Lawrence, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Man, the pleasure is all mine. Hey, so I want to jump right in. I know we have a lot of ground to cover. So I just want to really start by just understanding your childhood, where you grew up, and what your early life experiences were like.
Okay. So I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana. I am one of seven. So we have a really big family. I am the youngest son. And so we grew up, man, my family, we lived in the city, but we owned a lot of land in the country. So I spent the most of my weekends and the summers in the country, and, just tried to, I hung out with my dad as much as possible. So my mom was a social worker. She actually, she was one of the key individuals for what was called the Philadelphia Center right when the AIDS epidemic started blowing up. She was very pivotal in counseling AIDS patients. My father was an entrepreneur. He actually, he went into business the year I was born. And so all I knew was business. And so I got to see that growing up. We never had a dull moment. And growing up, we owned a lot of land, and I felt it was a duty to go to the military. So I went to the Army right out of high school, started out enlisted, became an officer. That was pretty amazing. Got a chance to get deployed, led 400 troops over there in Iraq. And then I started the corporate thing. That was fun, but man, being in the military and you have a plan and then, life happens and you have to respond and still, take care of everyone. I missed that. And I found that when I started my own business. And that being able to be flexible and so forth, that served me really well as an entrepreneur. And I've been doing that now for about 15 years.
Okay, so I want to just jump back a little bit to your childhood, just to understand, were there any particular challenges or obstacles you faced in your early years?
The biggest thing, man, to be completely honest, was, third, fourth grade, my mother and father got divorced. And so having both parents in the house and then having to spend time with dad on the weekends and so forth and trying to balance that out, that was one of the most pivotal things in my childhood. And I can tell you, watching the Cosby Show every Thursday, man, and seeing Cliff and Claire Huxtable and their whole family, man, that's what I wanted. I wanted that, and I worked really hard for that. And that's been one of the foundational things for me as an individual that allows you to push through the challenges of life.
Yeah. How do you feel that the divorce of your parents impacted you?
You don't have that picture perfect, storytelling. You had to deal with something very emotional. You had to deal with something very real. And how do you love mom? How do you love dad? They don't like each other anymore. We have this new dynamic and it affected your grades, but then you have to overcome. You still have to be successful. You still have to go out and put your best foot forward. And it allowed me to adjust, man. Going through it was a challenge, but when you look at it now in retrospect, man, it was really foundational in me understanding how to adjust when things don't go as you plan.
Yeah. What about high school? What was high school like there?
Man, high school. So education is good. I was smart. I gave Caesar what Caesar was due, and I had fun. I enjoyed that, man. So in my family, you have to earn your keep, so to speak. And so all my friends had cars and so forth, and I worked. My dad, he's an entrepreneur. You get to earn your money. So I bought my first car. And since I bought my first car, I felt like, shucks, the grades were there. I did everything you needed me to do. So we needed to party in Dallas. I was in Dallas. If we needed to go over to Grambling, I was in Grambling. So high school was fun for me, man.
So what led to your decision to go into the military?
My grandfather. My grandfather served in World War II. He was first black manager, as we were told growing up. He was the first black manager at JCPenney's, and he spoke highly of the military. And I, growing up, if a young man had a hero, he was my hero. Our family owned land back at the 1900s. And so, I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be like my father. And so you follow in the steps of folks that seem to have the way paved. And to be honest with you, man, that structure, I like structure. I like structure with the flexibility to and the autonomy to make your own decisions. And he did it, and I wanted to do it too.
So tell me more about your grandfather. Obviously, he was very influential in your life. So share with me and the viewers a little bit more about him and how he impacted your life.
Man, he was one of the greatest people that I knew. I remember going out there. We would go fishing. We would. He told me a story. I remember this one of my best memories of my grandfather. I can't remember how old I was, but we were walking and we found this huge ant pile, and he kicked it over. And he said, "Boy, look at this." And we talked about how, and I didn't realize at the time it was a Proverbs 6. But what he was telling me was, be like the ant. They're always working. They're always prepared. Life will kick you in the teeth. Look, I just kicked their ant pile over. We went, fish, came back. The ant pile looked like it wasn't disturbed. And, those type of lessons, man, that his perspective, his, make it happen in spite of that. You can't, that's invaluable. That's completely invaluable, man. That's my favorite memory of my grandfather.
So you decide to go to the military. You make that decision. So tell me what that experience was like.
Man, it was, to be honest with you, it was fun. I mean, physically, I was an athlete, so that wasn't a challenge. Being in leadership, that wasn't a challenge. The interesting thing about my military career was the day we got the notification. It was on a Sunday that we were getting deployed, and the rubber met the road. You've been training. Can you go and deal with this environment when lives are really on the line? And as concerning as it was, not in an afraid standpoint, but it was, you get an opportunity to see if you really have it. And that was my first initial thought process about that. But if I do it all over again, I'm a little older than that now, but I would do it all over again, because I think that was one of the most pivotal opportunities that I've had in my life. Yeah.
So I know that you mentioned that you got deployed. Where did you get deployed, and what was that experience like, and what was, I guess, your biggest challenges?
So we got deployed to Baghdad, BIA, so the Baghdad International Airport. We were tasked out with 3rd Corps. I was a brigade level officer at the time, and so went over there with 1st Cavalry Division. And so as a brigade level officer, we were charged with setting up the first election that everyone saw on television. We were charged with training the 1st Iraqi Army, the Iraqi police. And it was really neat to see how much they believed in freedom. And they would have to, dress regularly, come to a disclosed location and change into the uniform because they were under attack. And so that level of sacrifice, it impressed me. We had all the briefings and the intelligence and so forth, but when you got in these different communities and so forth, and you saw these folks, they were just like us. They wanted to feed their families. They wanted to take care of folks, and so that was eye-opening. And we, having gone through combat, was, I got tested. Obviously, I'm still here, but that was fun. The thing I'll say about the time in Iraq, when we were mobilizing, I had to look all my soldiers' families in their eyes, and my promise to them was, I can't promise that they're going to come back. I can't promise that I'm going to come back, but they're going to have my best. And in a situation like that, I was, the good Lord allowed me to deliver on that promise, but that I took that responsibility seriously. Because you didn't mail in your decisions. You fought for something bigger than you, and that's something that I believe is a part of me to this day.
So you talked about the fact that you started your journey in the military being enlisted, and you became an officer. Share with us, that journey from being enlisted to becoming an officer. What was that experience like?
Hell, pure hell. You know, back then, to become an NCO, a non-commissioned officer, you had to go to PLDC, primary leadership development training, and so forth. And you had a sense of pride. And when you go to become an officer, they don't care anything about that. They test you. They put you through the ringer, 36-hour days, such and so forth. And it's a humbling experience. If I can say anything about that time, it lets you know what you're made of. Going back to the deployment, going back to OCS, here's what's interesting. If you've been battle tested when your life is on the line, if you've been battle tested when things, are at their highest state, getting out in the entrepreneurial world, those challenges, they're hard, they're difficult, they demand the respect that they're due, but no one's trying to take your life. And so, you have a perspective. And so one of the most difficult things that I've ever gone through, but man, I made it. I was successful in it. It entrenched me as a leader. And that's something that you can't sneeze at.
Right. So you get out the Army, you go into corporate America, and obviously you did not care for that experience, but take me on that journey of going to corporate America and then making that decision to transition to become an entrepreneur.
It's not that I didn't care for it. It's just there was something more. So when you've been successful, there's a point in your time in your life where you move from success to significance. And so I moved up fast, man. I made all the money. I was making six figures well into my 20s and so forth when I got out of the military. And so it boiled down to purpose. It boiled down to you can't replicate the urgency that you have in a deployment situation. Now I know this 15 years as an entrepreneur, the urgency of making payroll or trying to expand or just accomplishing a goal. Corporate America didn't do that. I was successful. I made the money, but, I remember having a conversation with my father about that. And he was like, boy, you need to do something that's going to motivate you. And so, what I found that to be wasn't corporate America and their goals. I felt that I could do differently. And so what led me to that decision, here in the Baton Rouge area, the murder-suicide rate within the veteran community was higher than the murder rate in Chicago. So to put that in perspective, people that wore the uniform, served this country, coming home with a thank you for your service. Okay, fantastic. They're blowing their brains out. Their families are being destroyed. And as a leader, somebody that led people, that wasn't acceptable. And so I found a purpose. I was good with money. We budgeted. I had the ability to self-start. We put a plan together. As an officer, you plan, right? I put all that together. I had completed an MBA and all of that at LSU, and I felt that I could make the difference. And for the last 12, 13 years, we've been making the difference. And not that those organizations that I work with, not that they didn't have purpose, but I felt that my gifts, the things that I care about, my passions were best served in an organization that I created. And I took a lot of what we do today in terms of benefits and so forth, and we rolled those into making ourselves a really great employer. But it was that purpose, man. People needed access to care, and we were able to step in the gap and fulfill that in various communities across the state.
And so how did you make the decision to go into, basically the mental health profession?
Well, again, my mom was a social worker growing up. That's kind of what I knew. I worked closely with that community, and I saw that as the biggest need. And the decision, I wanted to do it a whole year before I actually left. My mentor at the time, he had been in business. He had bought and sold. He had created and sold several businesses. And he told me, don't go until your wife signs off on it. So now that's a whole different level of planning. You got 4 kids. So I did. I planned. I looked at the processes and systems that I didn't agree with. I looked at the complete landscape of what was going on. And, I had to sell her. What you mean you're gonna leave a job? We're comfortable. We have a pension. We have all this stuff. What you mean you're gonna leave and do this thing? So I had to sell her. And December 14th, I sold her. We went to dinner, and she said, "All right, babe, I got your back." And with her blessing and that plan. And we went out and gave it our best shot. I gotta say this, that plan, that really fantastic, wonderful plan, that 5-year plan was valid for 6 months. So here I am back in this, all these projections, all these pro formas and all of that stuff. Yeah, that was good for 6 months. So we had to do a lot of it on the fly, but I was prepared for it, D. I was prepared for it. And my family supported me. I bumped my head more than early on. I did everything, janitor, to everything you can think of. I did it, and here we are, over a decade later, and I'm not the janitor anymore. I say that.
So talk to me about Post Trauma Institute. What do you all do, and why do you provide a valuable service to the community?
Right. So we're an integrated healthcare system, right? A mental health care system. So we have psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, all under one umbrella. And our focus is the clinical aspect, obviously, but we also focus on the corporate environment. Because if you're going to remove access to mental health care, you got to fish where the fish are. The folks that we target, they all goal-oriented individuals. They have jobs, but they're still dealing with mental health. My research shows that mental health, 50% of every community is dealing with mental illness. And so that means, just to put it in perspective, 50% of your organization has some level of impact. They're impacted by mental illness. And so what we decided to do was to remove the barriers to mental health. And that means, so when you start looking at that year that I had to study the environment and put a plan together, why do 90% of psychiatrists or psychiatric providers, why aren't they taking insurance? Well, because they don't have the processes and systems associated with dealing with the insurance companies. You have your employer-based insurances, and it's fantastic. Well, you can't go anywhere. Why? Because it's a challenge to deal with them. This one has a set of policies, and this one has a set of policies. And to be able to interact with that, you have to have the processes and systems to be able to address that, to pay your people, to keep the lights on, and so forth. And we were able to do that. What makes us different is that integrated model. So right now it's 9 months to get a new patient appointment with a psychiatrist, 12 months to get psychological testing. So that, college kids, school age kids are really feeling the impact of that, when you consider learning disabilities and so forth. And there was no cohesion. So you could see a psychiatrist, but you couldn't go and get a therapist. We put all of that under one umbrella so that there's just our speed of care, our integrated model allows us to make sure that we have the best outcomes. We keep people out of the hospital. State average in Louisiana is north of 10% of folks with mental illness returning back to the hospital. Over a decade, ours is less than 2%, because that's an intentional thing. So right. I sound like I'm going into a commercial about the organization, but that's what we're different, man. We believe in meeting people where they are. And so in business, you have push strategies and pull strategies. And a lot of healthcare is you get what you get and pay me good for it. Well, that's our way to do it. We take a pull approach where we figure out what the needs are of the people that we serve, and we bring that value at a level that our competitors, I don't want to say competitors, but other folks in this space, we bring a value that they don't. And that's invaluable, man. Treating people like people, meeting them where they are, hearing them, listening to them, and giving them a solution based on what they want. That's different.
Right. No, you kind of brought up a pretty startling statistic, in that about 50% of individuals suffer from mental illness, and obviously there's a stigma in society about mental illness and getting treated for that. So, what is your experience in that area with individuals not really wanting to get treatment?
So I'll bring it home. Again, we target, we go after goal-oriented individuals, so career-oriented people, and we're not set up to fix anybody. We're set up to help you accomplish your goals. I have a friend of mine that's a surgeon, very, very, she has a heart of gold. She went through a situation and didn't want her partners to know that she was going through it, but she was drowning. So she reached out for help. And this was years back, man. This is before telehealth and these platforms. We were one of the first companies to jump into the virtual space. But she needed help. She didn't want to drive her car, with these vanity plates and so forth to anybody's office, right? So we had to really, meet her where she was. It took her 2 weeks to fill out an intake packet. And then once she filled out the intake packet, it took about a month to make the appointment. And so we had to really dive down and say, well, this stigma thing is real. So and it shaped a lot of the communication that we had with the patients. But just to bring the story home, we offered her a virtual option. Okay, because before the virtual thing, what happened is you would want to come on a Saturday. You would want to come after hours or super early in the morning because you don't want your law partners to know that you're dealing with something, or you want to be as discreet as possible because stigma is real. Right. And she was able to get the help that she needed. And nowadays, since the pandemic, this is more people are talking about it more, but meeting people where they are, it takes effort. And that's something that, I'm hoping to see more of.
Yeah. And you just mentioned the pandemic, and that lead me to my next question. What impact did you see in your profession as it relates to mental health coming out of COVID or even during COVID?
People couldn't hide anymore. I mean, everybody, the boat capsized, everybody was in the water was cold. We got to get out the water. So, gone were the days that I'm going to just keep this tucked over in the closet about what I'm going through. And it became more, out in the open. So we started communicating differently with folks, right? Right at the top of the pandemic and afterwards. So if we're talking about corporate folks, you've had an executive coach. I've had an executive coach. That's sexy. I'm a big deal. I have an executive coach. What are we dealing with? We're dealing with an improper thought process. You need to see leadership better. You need to see your goals better, right? That's all therapy is. That's all mental health is. And so we were able to try to bridge the gap in this time where, hey, you want to perform better at your job, then come talk to us, because it's an improper thought process. And if you pack, you can call it executive function and executive development or behavioral reliability. We've used those terms over the years. But if we are now positioned and viewed as a guy to have for my success in the organization, if we talk to business leaders and show that, hey, investing in this for your people gets you back to double-digit net incomes, it's amazing. So the biggest thing that happened, because we have a corporate emphasis, is the C-suite individuals started looking at, you're a force multiplier. This is workforce development. Shortly as the pandemic started, settling down and so forth, people started hopping jobs. Well, the organizations that saw that, maybe I was okay, but my kid is dealing with something, and they incorporated dealing with mental illness, man, they didn't go anywhere because this organization has my back. There's value here, and it doesn't cost them anything, So that's one of the biggest things that happened, man. People became more aware. Business understood the bottom line impact. Just to throw out a ridiculous number, our economy is impacted to the tune of $6.3 trillion every year because of mental illness. Companies are losing $9.5 billion a day. So when you start talking about, most employers in this country are small business owners. So when you start talking about that bottom line and how to be, the strategic advantage and so forth, people are now looking at mental illness as the strategic advantage because it's important. If you're paying me a salary, you're paying me six figures in a company car and a corporate credit card, but I'm on Instagram all day because I'm coping, or I'm doing dope, or I'm abusing Adderall because I'm trying to cope, you're not getting a return on your investment. So organizations are starting to see that message is starting to get out. There's a really large organization here. For years prior to the pandemic, they was just send their leaders to us when they didn't have performance issues, or when they had performance issues. Now, what we're seeing is, we're able to work with the HR individuals. I'm actually giving a talk about this in a couple of days, but we're able to work with HR individuals to go and identify, key metrics. What do you look for? How do you get ahead of when somebody's drowning?
Hey, Lawrence, I hate to cut you off, man, because you've given some really valuable nuggets, but we're running out of time on the show.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry, but no, I enjoyed having you on the show, man. You gave us a lot of insight as it relates to mental health. But I want to thank you, and I want to thank my viewers for watching this episode of Self Made. I'm your host, Dee Brown CEO, and remember, without you, there's no me.